When you think of drummers, it's hard to do better than Mark Guiliana. His various collaborations have become the stuff of folklore among drum insiders. From Who's That Guy on Avishai Cohen gigs and albums, to the early precursors of his solo projects at spots like Rockwood Music Hall and Rose Live Music, to the Now vs. Now recordings, to the jazz stuff, to beat music. Then he played with Bowie! Even his clinic videos get passed around. Okay, you get it, right? The 0% of viewers of this video who did not know who Mark G was now know. But what if you had to sub for Mark? What if he took a months-long artist-in-residence gig at a conceptual art gallery? Which isn't even all that much of a stretch. What if he had a couple of tours lined up with some of his famous collaborators? And the call on those sub gigs came to you. Could you sub for Mark? Well, today, as usual, your humble servant will take on that mantle and jump gamely and naively into this hypothetical. That's not good. I'll be learning to play 3 of the classic songs that put Mark on the map. And we'll talk a bit about what makes them so difficult and what Mark brings that's unique. But ultimately, what you'd do in a pinch if you had to sub. Today on 80/20, could you sub for Mark G? Stay tuned. Let's start with song number 1. Mark's played with a ton of bands, from Gretchen Parlato to Donny McCaslin to Bowie. So anything we choose is going to leave a lot out of the canon. But I want to choose 3 songs that had the biggest impact on me as I was coming up and becoming a deeper and deeper Guiliana. So let's travel back in time to 2005 when a little record called At Home came out. Among other bangers, the single from that record was an odd meter romp called Feediop. Here's a Blue Note live recording. Funny story, the pianist on this record is Sam Barsh, who was friends with one of my friends from music school, so I asked him to do a gig, but then I had to talk to his manager. But he did indeed do the gig, and I was in way over my head, and the stage was right by the bathroom, and people kept ducking past us during tunes to do coke in the latrine. As you do. Anyway, Sam killed it on that gig. And now you know a little more about me. Let's talk about the tune. From the jump, Feediop would be a high mountain to climb if you were just jumping into the subsea. There's a bunch of idiomatic stuff to just memorize at the beginning, but essentially the song is 2 sections. This refrain in 7, which I'll show you, and this B section in 6. Get good at these 2 sections, and the rest will make sense. But that's just the hypothetical. Okay, you guys, today we're learning the tune canon of one Mr. Mark Guiliana. Mark G, if you know, you know. We've got 3 songs from 3 different eras. We've got 7 Ways from Now vs. Now. We've got Spirit Animal from Beat Music. And we've got Feediop from Avishai Cohen. This is the most challenging shoot I've ever done that isn't in a totally different fish out of water genre for me. These are 3 really challenging tunes. Let's get it! To simulate the experience of preparing to sub for Mark, I hopped in the shed and recorded a first take of Feediop. At the end, I was feeling pretty good. Okay, Feediop take 1, that's in the record books now. I hope it's good. We do not have time to go back and practice that a bunch of times. So between days, we'll listen to it and we'll practice whatever I need to practice. But then I heard the take. Okay, that's not good. So let's talk about what makes this tune from the standpoint of what I didn't love in my first take. I get out of the gate clean enough. Here Avishai is intentionally rushing the 8 notes in this live recording, but I think I hung okay. Let's skip to the first big section with that crazy ostinato in 7. Yeah, I'm not nailing the 4/3 part. Want to break the 4th wall? This section has an ostinato, which is just a repeating pattern, and it's all in 7. Bars 1 and 3 of the pattern are mostly the same, and bars 2 and 4 have variations. I'll play the pattern slow and simply so you can hear. Now I'll loop bar 1. Simple enough. Next, I'll add bar 2, so it makes a 2-bar loop. I love this little syncopation. Now I'll switch to bars 3 and 4. Bar 3 is the same as bar 1, but bar 4 has that 4 over 3. Now I'll just loop bar 4. Ouch, right? We go yet another layer of inception, because 4 over 3 crash course. We got the basic 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which you can group as 3 and then 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. But let's isolate that 3 and loop it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, say you were a music nerd and wanted to lump 4 beats in the space of 3. I'll snap 3 with my right hand and 4 with my left. There's a little mnemonic for this, which I think I stole from Adam Neely, which is pass the f***ing spinach. So pass the f***ing spinach, pass the f***ing spinach. So imagine cramming that into the first 3 bars of the 7, and you'd have this. So now I'll loop all 4 bars. And indeed, that's what I'm trying to do in take 1, but my 4 over 3 is rushing a bit. So over the next few days, I practiced just this section for about 20 to 25 minutes at a time with a metronome. I try to lay it right in the pocket without rushing, starting it below the performance tempo because that's harder, then bumping it up little by little. Also, just a word about what makes this approach unique. Instead of playing along with the song, I was turning the track off and playing along with the memorized figures with the metronome. This can be a good approach for stuff you've got mostly memorized but want to ingrain further. And it has the added benefit that you're starting to develop your own relationship with the material instead of just copying the original drummer. With that practice out of the way, it was time to record again. And I was confident I'd be better if I just relaxed and tried to lay those 4 over 3 bits in the pocket. Let's listen to a bit of my second take. So I get into the intro clean, which is the first way not to get fired. Let's skip to that primary ostinato. I'm satisfied with this. Now let's check the transition into the B section. The B section is this little bit in 3. It's not as technical as the A section, but let's listen to a bit. And of course we're skipping to keep this video short, but if you want to see the complete cover, it's linked below. I think that'll play. It felt nice and clean. We'll know for sure when we listen to it. But yeah, I think that was much improved from the first time. Now, the astute among you will be thinking, wait a minute, that's a different color t-shirt. And that's because after I recorded my day 2 take, I came back for one more. I'll start not trying to be a perfectionist tomorrow. Anyway, if you want to see that less perfect take, it's on my Instagram and it's linked below. Anyway, so let me know how you think I did in the comments, but I feel like on that one, I'd be ready to hop on stage in lieu of Mark without completely humiliating myself, even though it would still be a pale imitation of Mark, which more on that later because I just made a little mindset mistake. Anyway, let's go on to talk about the most demanding, most famous song for all the Mark drumheads. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Mark played it. JT played it. It's the one, the only tune we're going to talk about a little later in this video. But first, I need a break from all the odd meters and composite rhythms. We're going to take a little trip to Beat Town. And if you want to know more about the song I just got you all wound up about, you can feel free to skip ahead. It's there in the chapters. But I think you'll want to watch this, because Spirit Animal. How cool is that? Anyway, if we go even farther back in time, beat music had its origins with another Mark-led enterprise, Hearant. There's a song called Locked in a Basement that they played in the 2000s. That spoken word is a Gigi Allen quote, by the way. I'm trying to put danger back in rock and roll. If you don't know who Gigi is, Google him sometime, just not at work. Anyway, I was there in the audience, at Rose Live Music on Grant Street in Williamsburg, before it closed. If not for this literal gig, one of this series of gigs this month with this band. Later, I also got to play a gig there with my friend Matt. More 80-20 origin story probably no one cares about. But if we fast forward to the future, we get beat music, and Mark's penchant for obscure spoken word quotes, and the spirit animal thing.
In our necks, in everyone's neck, you have a neck, I have a neck. There's our spirit animal.
Putting on my sub hat, I sat down and recorded a take of this. Okay, well I see why Mark wanted to do beat music after Avishai and Now Versus Now. Sheesh. Let's have a listen.
Check it out.
Wow, does it feel good to play with this band. And this is the easiest intro ever. The sample literally has a metronome and a count off. Can I take just a minute to plug my cymbals? The hats are a combo of a 16-inch vinyl trash crash on the bottom and an extra dry light bottom hat on top, with a splash below everything. It's a combo I stole from Spaven, and it sounds divine on this track. Okay, let's talk briefly about what makes this beat special. I did some research, and I think this beat has its origins in reggae. I mean, listen to the keyboards here. From my research, this beat is probably a variation of what's called the Steppers beat. But sped up. And instead of 4 beats on the floor, we play 1 and 3, more like a rock beat. But a lot of the hi-hat embellishments survive. So let's listen to a little more of my cover. The thing about this tune is it's pretty ambient and it kind of evolves. A lot of fun to play and listen to, because there aren't any figures to memorize. I'm gonna call my take 1 good and say this one is ready to sub. And speaking of subs, I mean, you know? Just saying. Anyway, now for the song you've been waiting for. Now versus Now's 7 Ways. This was for sure the most demanding.
Fuck me, how did I get a blister?
Quick background. Now versus Now is Jason Lindner's fusion group, with bassist Panagiotis Andreou. Now versus Now's sound is a little retro. Instead of cool chords, they like stuff like minor triads. It's also a bit punk rock. Like, listen to part of the intro to 7 Ways from this live show in Europe. Anyway, 7 Ways is probably their most famous song, and Mark and Justin Tyson, who replaced Mark in Now versus Now, have a lot to do with it. Like, when this super early clip of Mark soloing surfaced, and everybody was like, "What is this?" That's 7 Ways. Let's get into this by way of my first take. Depending on the arrangement, 7 Ways starts with this little songo-ish groove in 7. But the part everybody remembers besides the solo is the anthem bit. Let me demonstrate. I'm putting the click on downbeats here, and it's actually in 14/4, but that's equivalent to 7 big beats. That's the basic gist, but in the performances, they stretch it. Listen to this. That's just a function of the fact that there's no metronome in real life. You can make one quarter note take longer than another one if the whole band agrees, and you get this funkiness. There are some hip figures to catch. Then the keyboard solo happens over this section after the key change. That's all well and good. Nobody remembers that though. What they do remember is the solo section. Let's cut here and talk about an issue I mentioned before. Bring it in. When you're subbing for somebody or covering a tune, one of the hardest things to do is separate your playing from the drummer who played on the recording. Because it's so easy to have that drummer in your head, comparing yourself to them at every bar. And let me tell you, it's death. It's the antithesis of being a creative player. I'm not saying don't transcribe and learn from them, but when you go to perform, you have to be you. Think about it. Imagine if you went out into the real world and tried to do an exact impersonation of, I don't know, one of your friends. You'd be terrible at it. And that doesn't mean you're a worse person than your friend. You're just worse at being him or her. And you're completely squandering what makes you, you. Okay, so that's all well and good. But how do we do that? Well, results may vary, and it's easier for experienced players, but it gets back to practicing the solo not with the tune. Do just enough to memorize the figures, then turn on the metronome and just play it from your head. I've gotten to a spot where I'm very happy with my playing when I'm being me. Like here, I'm not trying to fill the shoes of any other drummer because this track was written for me specifically. So how do we do that in other situations? As I practice the 7 Ways solo section, I'm trying to get back to the same mental place as if I'd never heard anybody else playing this song. Don't worry, the Mark and JT influence will come out either way. You don't have to force it. So I'm playing this with a metronome and starting slow, then bumping up the tempo little by little, like before. After a few days of practice like this, it was time to record my own version again.
So I think I can walk into my house, look my wife in the eye, sit down and have myself a cold beer and feel a feeling of respect after that. I don't know. Though I think it felt much more centered and much more like I was able to play with my own voice than the first one, even though still had Mark in my cans, so couldn't help but imitating Mark a little bit. But we'll see.
Let's listen to my production take of 7 Ways. That's the anthem. Let's skip ahead to one of my favorite parts, the transition to the keyboard solo. You'd be amazed how many reps it took to nail that intro. But with the real band, that would have to be super solid, because they're cueing off you to know where to come in. Speaking of cueing in, let's skip to the other iconic part of this song, the drum solo. You get the gist. I'll skip ahead so you get the highlights. Overall, I was happier with this solo, even though it was sloppier because I was letting it fly more. I'm sure if I had another couple weeks with this, I could get even freer, but I'm pretty satisfied that if I had to sub, I could give the people something entertaining. What did you think? Leave a comment below. And as always, if you'd like to make your own covers of all these songs and get them reposted on my tiny Instagram channel, just upload them and use the hashtag 8020challenge and I'll big up you. Side note, give me at least 48 hours. You know who you are. So that's the end of this mission. And I feel pretty good. I feel like if I had to play any of these songs on stage, I'd probably survive. And when I did, I'd try to keep one thought in my head. Don't be boring. Because once you know the song, the biggest risk isn't some minor technical mistake. It's getting all up in your head and being boring. In fact, that's why the take I chose for 7 Ways was actually sloppier than the earlier days take. But I felt like it was more spontaneous and I went for it more. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video and would like to be notified every time I post something just like it, just click the subscribe button below the player and the bell next to it. If you've got a drum friend you think would enjoy this, consider sharing. Anyway, you guys, I'll be back the same time the very next week with another lesson of the week. See you soon.